Law in the Wild West was a loose concept, often enforced by whoever had the quickest draw or the most influence. In this wild land, justice was swift, severe, and often brutal. Punishments weren't just about correcting behavior. They were about survival and sending a clear message. Cross the line, and you'll pay a heavy price. Here are some of the most barbaric punishments that the American frontier had to offer. Desert banishment. Imagine being left alone in the middle of a vast desert with no water, no food, and no idea which way to go. Some communities chose this as a punishment, forcing the offender out into the wilderness to fend for themselves. It was a silent execution, using nature as the executioner. The sun beat down relentlessly during the day, causing dehydration and heat stroke. Nights brought freezing temperatures, leaving the banished shivering and exposed. Wild animals prowled the sands, coyotes, snakes, and scorpions, all potential threats. Many who were banished this way were never seen again, their fates sealed by the unforgiving environment. Vigilante justice and lynching. With official law enforcement spread thin over vast territories, many communities took justice into their own hands. If someone was suspected of a crime, be it stealing a horse, rustling cattle, or worse, the townsfolk might form a posse. These vigilante groups acted as judge, jury, and executioner. Lynching became a grim staple of frontier justice. Suspected criminals were dragged from their homes or jail cells, often in the dead of night. Without a fair trial, a rope was thrown over the sturdiest tree branch, and the noose tightened around the accused's neck. One moment they were pleading for mercy, the next they were swinging above the ground. Innocent or guilty, their fate was sealed by the mob's rage. Take the story of Ellsworth, a small town where a man named Ben was accused of theft. Despite shaky evidence, the townspeople were convinced of his guilt. They stormed the makeshift jail, pulled him out, and before dawn, Ben's lifeless body hung as a warning to others. Public hangings as entertainment. Not all executions were carried out by angry mobs. Some were organized events, treated almost like community gatherings. When a hanging was scheduled, word spread quickly. Families traveled from nearby ranches and towns to witness the spectacle. Vendors sold pies, drinks, and trinkets, turning the grim occasion into a bizarre festival. The condemned person was often paraded through the town, giving everyone a good look at the face of crime. On the gallows, they stood with hands tied, a sack over their head, and a noose around their neck. Sometimes they were allowed final words. Other times, the crowd drowned them out with cheers or jeers. When the lever was pulled, the trapdoor opened and they fell. The silence that followed was heavy, broken only by the creaking of the rope and the murmurs of the crowd. In some cases, the drop wasn't enough to break the neck, leading to a slow and agonizing death by strangulation. Children watched, wide-eyed, as life drained from the person swinging above. These events etched themselves into the memories of all who attended, a stark reminder of the consequences of defying the law. Branding with hot irons. For thieves and rustlers, branding wasn't just for cattle. It was a punishment meant to mark wrongdoers for life. The process was as cruel as it was effective. A metal iron, often shaped like a letter or symbol representing the crime, was heated over open flames until it glowed red hot. The criminal was restrained, their skin exposed. As the searing metal pressed against flesh, the smell of burning skin filled the air. Screams of pain echoed as the iron sizzled, leaving a permanent scar. A branded face or hand was a visible badge of dishonor, ensuring that everyone who saw them knew of their past. It made starting over nearly impossible, casting a long shadow over any hope of redemption. Tar and feathering. This punishment combined physical pain with deep humiliation. The victim was stripped, and hot tar, sticky and scalding, was poured or brushed onto their body. The tar burned the skin, causing blisters and intense pain. Feathers were then thrown onto the tarred individual, sticking to them and making them look absurd. But the ordeal didn't end there. The tarred and feathered person was often paraded through the streets, sometimes tied to a rail or cart. Onlookers laughed, jeered, and sometimes threw rotten food or stones. The removal of the tar was just as painful, tearing at the skin and prolonging the agony. It was a punishment designed to break both body and spirit. Whippings and floggings. Whipping was a common sentence for various offenses. The convicted person was tied to a post or tree, their back laid bare. A whip, sometimes a simple leather strap, other times a multi-tailed lash, was used to deliver the punishment. Each strike cut into the skin, leaving raw, bloody welts. 10 lashes might be a light sentence. More serious crimes could earn 50 or even 100. The whipping continued regardless of the victim's screams or pleas for mercy. Some fainted from the pain, only to be revived and whipped again. Infections were common, and without proper medical care, a whipping could lead to prolonged suffering or death. Forced hard labor. For some, the sentence was a life of toil and exhaustion. Criminals were put to work building railroads, digging canals, or mining for gold and silver. Chained together, they labored from dawn until dusk under the watchful eyes of armed guards. The work was backbreaking, swinging heavy picks, pushing loaded carts, and breaking rocks under the scorching sun or in damp, dark tunnels. Accidents were common, cave-ins, explosions, and falls claimed many lives. Food was meager, rest was rare, and punishment for slowing down was swift. A whip across the back or worse. The goal wasn't rehabilitation, it was exploitation until there was nothing left to give. Mutilation as punishment. In some places, justice was meted out in the form of bodily harm. Thieves might have a finger or hand cut off. Liars could lose their tongues, and others might be disfigured in ways that marked them forever. These acts were carried out without medical expertise. An axe, a knife, or even a heated blade used to cauterize the wound. The immediate pain was intense, but the long-term effects were debilitating. Missing fingers or hands made it hard to work, to eat, or to defend oneself. The psychological impact was equally severe, as the mutilated person became an object of fear or disgust. It was a punishment that lingered for a lifetime. The Wild West was a place where the harshness of life was matched by the severity of its punishments. In a land without established law, people created their own rules and enforced them with brutal efficiency. These punishments weren't just about the individual, they were about maintaining order in a chaotic world. Today, these stories serve as stark reminders of a past where justice was often swift and unforgiving. They highlight how far we've come in establishing laws that aim for fairness and humanity. While the legends of the Wild West continue to captivate our imaginations, they also teach us valuable lessons about the importance of due process, human rights, and the continuous effort to build a more just society.